South Korea reported its first coronavirus since the very same day as the US, January 20. But South Korea has kept its infection and death rates much lower than we have, reporting about 11,000 cases and fewer than 300 deaths. The country is now up and running. We are bringing in South Korea's Foreign Minister Kang Kyung-hwa. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for having me. So we wanted to pick your brain on a number of topics related to coronavirus because the response in South Korea has been so widely applauded. Strategies like screening people who enter the country, drive-through testing, disinfection protocols, and contact tracing. Do you think that South Korea's strategies could work in the US? And even if they could, do you think that perhaps it's too late for Americans to adopt them? Well, I think first of all, our country has never been closed. We've always kept society open and the border open. And we were able to do this because we had the three T's: the testing, tracing, and treatment. Very robust system of the three T's. I think the three T's are the key to any fight against any infectious disease. And it just so happens that our recent experience with the MERS outbreak in 2015 laid the seeds for the success this time. Our response to MERS in 2015 was not that laudable. There was lots of shortcomings. But having learned from that experience, we've beefed up the disease control infrastructure and the legal framework. And that has really been put to the full test and successfully, I must say this time. In addition to the three T's, part of South Korea's strategy for isolating coronavirus cases early on relied on government civilians. Did you ever have any concerns about privacy rights, and how do you see the balance against protecting public health? Civilians is not quite the term that I would use in the tracing. The tracing is absolutely necessary to track down the patients and the close contacts as early as possible to isolate them so that you are then able to preserve the freedom of movement of the rest of society. In order to keep society open, it's imperative that you quickly isolate and quarantine the patients and the close contacts. Privacy issue comes in because of the information that we release to the public about the movement of the patient. Our disease control law also guarantees the public's right to know about health issues that affect them. And it is the government's responsibility to inform the public about the evolving nature of this infection and the movement of the patient. Informing the public about where the patients have been prior to being confirmed as positive so that they can see if they cross paths with the confirmed patients and decide for themselves if they need to come and get tested. So the privacy issue of the patient is the issue here. And we've been very cautious to limit the information that is provided to the public about the movement of the patient. I want to move on to education for a moment. After a few fast starts, South Korean schools began reopening just this week. We've seen some video students that are wearing masks and plexiglass screens around the desks and the temperature checks. How confident are you that schools will be able to remain open with these precautions? We took the decision to open the schools 8 days after they were supposed to open in March. The value we place on education is perhaps the highest of any country. And it was extremely important that we got the school's schedule back on track. So we have decided to open the schools beginning with the final graders in high school. And that was yesterday. But we made sure that all the sanitary measures were in place. The requirements on the part of the students themselves. The schools make sure that the social distancing measures are well in place and also protocols in place in case anything happens. And as you talk about, there have been recent outbreaks. For example, there was a recent COVID-19 cluster linked to a 29-year-old man who visited several nightclubs on one night. How concerned are you about this kind of spread, and how were you able to get it contained so quickly? Well, I think with any spike like this, of course, it's a concern, it's a worry, and the particular case has now led to nearly 200 cases over a matter of 10 or so days. And this is all originating to some nightclub activities during the long holiday period in early May. Obviously, the nightclub activities involve a lot of young people who hop bars. I think it's the expression move around the country, and so that has meant we found infections related to the nightclub activities in all parts of the country. I think once again our testing and tracing capacity was put to the test. It quickly wrapped up. Prior to the spike, the daily testing numbers was around 5,000 or 6,000. After the spike, we've made the testing available anonymous and free of cost because we realized that many young people who frequented these establishments would be reluctant to come forward to get tested. So, to make it anonymous and cost free, we've been able to test well over 60,000. I think cases over the past 10 days, and that then had led to this number of confirmed cases, both who went to the establishments themselves, but secondary infections of their family members, their friends, and workplace colleagues. And so, actually, what's gonna be my next question is are you expecting perhaps a second wave of infections, and is there any more preparation that goes into it beyond the 3Ts? I think we should all learn to live with this risk. It's a virus that travels very quickly. There's a lot of we don't know about COVID-19, but one thing we know that it travels very quickly and it also travels very silently. People can be spreading the disease without even knowing that they have the virus because asymptomatic people can be contagious. It turns out that 2 days prior to the symptoms showing, that's when they are most contagious. In addition to the 3Ts, what we are preparing in terms of the contingencies. Seoul metropolitan area, perhaps one of the most crowded spaces on earth. So the Seoul city government, the surrounding provincial government, with the participation of the city government of Incheon Airport, they are now putting together an integrated hospital management system so that if huge numbers of infections were to arise, they would be able to share the hospital resources because it's very important not to get the medical establishments overwhelmed with a number of patients that they cannot handle. We also have local governments having contingencies in place for a number of increases. Hospital beds to take care of the intensive patients, but also community care center. We call them where light symptom patients, and 80% of them are light symptoms. Some don't even need to care, any care. They just need to be quarantined and monitored. Of course, the consistent messaging to the public that we are not going to get back to the life-free COVID-19. This risk is there, and therefore we need to learn to live with this risk. And that means everybody doing their share to stick to the central rules, wearing masks in public places and transportation, and so on. And washing your hands, of course. The messaging being that everybody has a role to play. Since the United States now has the most infections that any country in the world, are you worried then about Americans bringing the virus to South Korea? We have indeed. The air travel between Korea and the US is still very open. I mean, the number of flights have been greatly reduced because the number of passengers buying tickets, but the air travel remains largely open between the United States and Korea. We have Koreans coming in, we have other nationalities, Americans coming in through this flight, and yes, there are people who are confirmed positive after entering into Korea. And this is not just from the United States, it's from Europe, it's from countries in the Middle East and West Asia. And again, we are not closing the border on them. We are managing them after a series of steps to manage the incoming traffic. We have introduced 14 days of quarantine as of early April for all inbound travelers. It's not just for foreigners, but Koreans at home if you have an address, in government facilities if you don't. And also, since about 15 days ago, we've also introduced the mandatory testing for all inbound travelers. Lastly, on a light-hearted note, the return of baseball has been a big deal. Many sports stars of America are turning to Korean Baseball League, which is being broadcasting here in the United States. How important was that for your country bringing your baseball back? I think the coronavirus is certainly a health challenge, but it's also a psychological challenge. This prolonged period of lockdowns and social distancing, it has to have impact on the psychological dimension of the people. So movements like this to make baseball, which is a big part of the leisure activity for Koreans here, as in many other countries, to have that available, not in the stadiums but without the crowds, but available on television screens. This is an important move to address that element of this global challenge. Thank you, Minister, so much for your time. We appreciate it. Thank you very much.